Have you ever heard of the heavenly codes of wealth? The Bible speaks of them all the time, but few see them. Florence Scovel Shinn deciphered these spiritual keys and showed how to apply them in everyday life. Today, I'll reveal how these hidden codes can change your financial and spiritual life once and for all. Continue in the video. Chapter 1. The first code: words that open invisible safes. Many believe that money is hidden in banks, investments, or distant inheritances. But Florence Scovel Shinn teaches that the true vault of wealth lies in the words that come out of your mouth. The Bible confirms this truth in a powerful way. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Proverbs 18 verse 21. This means that every sentence you utter is a key that can open doors of prosperity or lock the gates of scarcity. Think about how many times someone says, "I can never save money," "I'm always broke," or "life is hard for me." These words are not just simple complaints. They are spiritual decrees that echo in the unseen and shape reality. Florence affirmed, "The word is your magic wand. When you declare lack, you create lack. When you affirm abundance, you open the vaults of the unseen, releasing resources that seemed unreachable." It's as if each phrase were a command sent to the universe, which, obeying divine law, responds in equal measure. The Bible reinforces this heavenly code in Mark 11 verse 23. "If anyone says to this mountain, 'Be taken up and cast into the sea,' and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says will happen, it will be done for him." The detail is in saying, it is not enough to think. It is necessary to release aloud the decree you desire. Imagine a person who keeps saying, "I am broke." That word creates a locked vault, where the very key is their own confession. Now imagine someone who, even in the face of hardship, declares, "I am prosperous because the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want." Psalm 23 verse 1. That word is like a secret code that opens invisible vaults. Shinn shows us that money is only a reflection of the spiritual world. If the mouth speaks lack, reality will show lack. If the mouth speaks abundance, doors of opportunity open. It is not magic, it is law. Just as gravity never fails, the law of the word also never fails. A practical example: when someone faces debt, instead of repeating, "I have no way to pay," they should declare, "The infinite supply of God meets all my needs now and forever." This phrase, repeated with faith, opens vaults of ideas, people, and pathways that bring the solution. Florence said that many believe in bad luck, but in truth, they live under the effect of their own negative words. The Bible had already warned in Matthew 12 verse 37, "For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned." The heavenly code is clear. Words are judges and also liberators. Therefore, if you want to unlock the vault of prosperity, start with your tongue. Re-educate your speech. Transform complaints into affirmations of abundance. Replace "I can't" with "All things are possible to him who believes." Mark 9 verse 23. Every time you declare, you activate an invisible code that opens new paths. Now, before we move on to the next chapter, I want to invite you to reflect. What words have been dominating your life? Words of scarcity or words of abundance? Leave in the comments which declaration of prosperity you choose to practice starting today. And, of course, if this content is already opening your spiritual vision, leave your like, thumbs up, subscribe, and keep receiving these precious keys. Chapter 2. The mind is God's vault. What you think, you manifest. If in the first code we learned that words open invisible vaults, now we discover where these vaults are really kept. In the mind. Florence Scovel Shinn teaches that thoughts are seeds, and each seed planted grows into circumstances in life. The Bible confirms, "For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he." Proverbs 23 verse 7. In other words, it is not only what you say, but mainly what you think continuously that shapes your reality. The mind is like a divine vault, capable of storing incalculable riches or imprisoning the soul in scarcity. Everything depends on the content you choose to keep in it. Think of someone who constantly feeds thoughts of fear, What if I lose my job? What if the money runs out? These thoughts turn into emotions, and emotions shape behaviors that end up attracting exactly what was feared. Job once said, "That which I greatly feared is come upon me, and that which I was afraid of is come unto me." Job 3 verse 25. This is the direct reflection of a mind that becomes a vault of anxiety instead of a vault of abundance. Now, when the mind is filled with faith, trust, and positive images, it makes room for prosperity to manifest. Paul reinforces this in Philippians 4 verse 8. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely. Think about such things. See, the biblical command is clear. Right thinking is a spiritual key. Florence used to say that the mind is like a movie projector. What is inside will inevitably be displayed on the screen of life. If you want to see abundance out there, you must first visualize it within. This does not mean illusion, but aligning with the divine truth that the silver is mine and the gold is mine, saith the Lord. Haggai 2 verse 8. A practical example. Imagine two people with the same financial difficulty. One fills the mind with worry, wakes up thinking about bills, goes to sleep imagining debts. The other, despite the bills, begins to visualize opportunities, sees herself receiving, mentally declares that doors are opening. Guess which one will attract faster solutions? The second one, because her mind has become receptive to the flow of God. This does not mean denying reality, but re-signifying it through faith. Shinn said, "Imagination is God's treasure within you. When you use your mind to imagine wealth, health, and opportunities, you are opening divine vaults." The Bible confirms this principle in Ephesians 3 verse 20. "Now unto him that is able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us." Notice carefully. God also works through what we think. Here is a powerful exercise. Before sleeping, instead of reviewing the problems of the day, close your eyes and imagine your prosperous life. Visualize doors opening, opportunities arising, bills being paid, and give thanks as if it were already real. This simple habit transforms the mind into an open heavenly vault, ready to pour out prosperity. And I ask you, what has been occupying more space in your mind? Fear or trust? Debts or solutions? Leave your comment sharing what you intend to start thinking from today. And don't forget, leave your like, thumbs up, and subscribe so you don't miss the next codes we'll uncover together. Chapter 3. Gratitude. The code that multiplies everything you touch. If the mind is God's vault, gratitude is the password that unlocks it. Florence Scovel Shinn used to say that gratitude opens the doors to blessings because it prepares the heart to receive them. The Bible confirms this principle in 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 18. "In everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you." Notice, in everything, not just when everything is going well. Gratitude is not a simple thank you. It is an inner posture that recognizes that God is already at work, even when human eyes cannot yet see. Many people live asking, but forget to give thanks. That's like trying to withdraw from a vault without ever entering the right password. Jesus himself demonstrated this principle in the miracle of multiplying the loaves and fishes. Before distributing, he looked up to heaven and gave thanks. Matthew 14 verse 19. The act of giving thanks beforehand was the code that unlocked multiplication. And this applies to our lives. When we give thanks for the little turns into much. Florence warned that ingratitude blocks the flow of prosperity. Think of someone who only complains. "My salary is too low, my house is too small, nothing works out for me." That mental pattern shuts down the heavenly vaults because it vibrates scarcity. On the other hand, someone who says, "Lord, thank you because I have provision today, thank you for the roof over my head," creates space to receive more. Practical exercise. Start each morning by listing 3 things you are grateful for. They can be small. The air you breathe, the health you keep, the food on your table. As this habit strengthens, your perception shifts. You begin to see opportunities where before you only saw problems. And notice how the Bible reinforces this code in John 11 verse 41. When Jesus raises Lazarus, before the miracle he declares, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me." He gives thanks even before seeing Lazarus come out of the tomb. This shows that gratitude is faith in action. It is declaring abundance before physically touching it. Florence often said, "The man who gives thanks for what he has not yet received sets the law in motion." This is powerful, because gratitude is a seed planted in spiritual soil that produces multiplied fruit in the natural. Now reflect with me. How many times have you waited to receive before giving thanks? The invitation here is to reverse the order. First give thanks, then receive. This is the true code of multiplication. And you? Have you ever tried giving thanks even before seeing the result? Share in the comments a situation where gratitude transformed your life or your day. Also, don't forget to leave your raising hands and subscribe to the channel so you can continue receiving each code that will draw you closer to the divine flow of prosperity. Chapter 4. The Power of Vision. Seeing the invisible before it exists. There is a spiritual principle that few dare to practice. Vision precedes manifestation. Florence Scovel Shinn used to say, "Everything that man imagines already exists in the invisible plane and will materialize when faith calls it into the visible." This is one of the most powerful heavenly codes, because it requires courage to believe before you can touch. The Bible confirms this in Hebrews 11 verse 1. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. In other words, seeing the invisible is the very definition of faith. Whoever waits to see in order to believe has not yet understood the code. The true spiritual wealthy one is the person who sees with the eyes of the soul before the eyes of the body. Think about Abraham. God told him in Genesis 15 verse 5, "Look now toward the heavens and count the stars if you are able to count them. So shall your descendants be." Abraham had no children. His reality was sterility and waiting. But God gave him a vision, countless stars, so that he would feed his faith with images, not with the scarcity of the moment. This is the secret. Vision creates the future reality. Florence insisted that every person should build clear mental images of what they desire. This is not mere fantasy, but aligning the mind with the divine plan. A house, a prosperous business, a debt-free life, all begin as a photograph imprinted in the mind. And that photograph, watered with faith and words, takes shape in the physical world. Unfortunately, many nurture distorted visions. When they think of the future, they only see debts, illnesses, failures. It's like planting weed seeds and expecting to harvest sweet fruits. That will never happen. God's vault only opens when you place before you the correct, abundant, positive vision, aligned with His promise. In Habakkuk 2 verse 2 it is written, "Write the vision and make it plain upon tablets, so that he may run who reads it." The Bible not only commands us to have vision, but also to record it, detail it, make it clear. Powerful exercise is to write with rich detail how you see yourself in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. Where will you be? What will you be doing? With whom will you share your prosperity? This is not vanity, it is organized faith. Jesus also reinforced this code when he said in John 4 verse 35, "Lift up your eyes and look at the fields, for they are already white for harvest." He was speaking of a spiritual harvest, but the principle is the same. Do not look at the present with limited eyes, but see the hidden potential in the invisible. A practical example. Imagine a young man without resources, but who dreams of having his own company. If he spends his days repeating, "I'll never make it, I don't have capital, I don't know anyone," his vision builds walls. But if he declares, "I see myself running a prosperous business, helping people, being a channel of abundance," the vision opens doors, and suddenly people and opportunities begin to appear. Florence taught that the imagination is God's workshop within us. When you create within your mind, you give Him raw material to shape into the visible world. Without vision, there is no foundation for the miracle. Now I ask you, what images have you been nurturing in your mind? Are they images of fear or of victory? Of lack or of fullness? Write in the comments one vision you want to establish today and declare it as reality. Sparkles. And if this content has already awakened something in you, leave your thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Every time you interact, more people can be reached with these spiritual truths that have been transforming lives. Chapter 5. Spiritual Obedience. The discipline that activates the codes. Knowing the celestial codes is useless without spiritual obedience. Many understand God's promises intellectually, even repeat verses, but do not practice them. Florence Scovel Shinn used to say, "Faith without action is dead." Man must obey divine intuition and walk toward what he believes, even without visible guarantees. The Bible echoes this principle in James 1 verse 22. "Be doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves." In other words, listening is not enough. The secret lies in applying, in disciplining the mind, the mouth, and actions so they align with what God has already decreed. Moses is a clear example. In the desert, the people cried out for water. God commanded him to speak to the rock, but Moses, irritated, struck it with his staff. Water flowed, but his disobedience cost him entry into Canaan. Numbers 20:7-12. The lesson is tough but clear. When we disobey, even if the miracle happens, there are consequences. Spiritual obedience is the key that activates the codes without loss. Florence reminded us that obedience is a form of mental discipline. It's not just about following external rules, but about submitting to the Spirit. Often, divine intuition suggests simple steps: forgiving someone, changing a word, being generous, and an immediate response opens doors of abundance. But if we resist, we block the invisible flow. In Deuteronomy 28 verse 1 it is written, "If you diligently obey the voice of the Lord your God, being careful to observe all his commandments, the Lord your God will set you high above all nations of the earth." This promise is not for those who merely read or listen, but for those who obey. Obedience generates exaltation, prosperity, multiplication. In practical life, this can be illustrated by a person who wants to prosper financially. She prays for abundance, declares verses of provision, but continues to spend more than she earns, dishonoring commitments and ignoring the discipline of managing resources. It is not a lack of prayer, but a lack of obedience to the spiritual and natural laws that sustain prosperity. The code is not activated by emotion, but by disciplined practice. Jesus reinforced this in John 14 verse 15. "If you love me, keep my commandments." To keep is not to memorize, but to live. It means aligning thoughts, words, and actions with love and truth. When that happens, obedience ceases to be a burden and becomes a path to freedom. Florence compared obedience to an exercise routine. Just as the body requires discipline to grow healthy, the soul also needs spiritual consistency. Reading the Word, declaring affirmations of faith, guarding thoughts, and practicing acts of generosity are exercises that strengthen the connection with the divine. Perhaps this is where many fail. They want immediate results without the patience of discipline. But as Paul said in Galatians 6 verse 9, "And let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart." Persevering obedience is what guarantees the harvest. And now I ask you, in which area of your life has God been asking for obedience and you still resist? Maybe it's forgiveness, maybe it's financial stewardship, maybe it's the proper use of words. Write in the comments which code you feel you need to activate through obedience today. Raising hands. If this chapter brought you clarity, leave your thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share this video so more people may discover the celestial codes of prosperity. Chapter 6. The Secret of the Seed. Giving to multiple. There is a spiritual principle that confuses human logic. The more you give, the more you receive. Florence Scovel Shinn repeated tirelessly, "Man cannot receive what he does not give. Abundance begins with generosity." The Bible confirms this law in Luke 6 verse 38. "Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over will be poured into your lap." The secret of the seed is that it always carries multiplication within itself. A single grain of corn once planted does not return as just one grain. It becomes a cob with dozens of other grains. This is how the spiritual world works. The seed that leaves your hand never returns the same size. However, many people get stuck at this point. The fear of lack makes them hold on to what they have, believing that keeping it is the best way to prosper. But Proverbs 11 verse 24 teaches the opposite. One gives freely, yet grows all the richer. Another withholds what he should give, and only suffers want. Saving out of fear is like suffocating your own harvest. Florence reminded us that generosity is not limited to money. It can be a word of encouragement, a gesture of kindness, or time given to someone. But when it comes to finances, many forget that money also obeys this law. If it circulates, it grows. If it stagnates, it decays. Look at the story of the widow of Zarephath in 1 Kings 17 verses 8 to 16. She had only a handful of flour and a little oil, enough for one last meal with her son. But by obeying the prophet Elijah's voice and giving to him first, her household never again knew scarcity during the drought. The little she had was multiplied, because she understood the secret of the seed. This is the key difference between a scarcity mindset and a prosperity mindset. The poor think, if I give, I'll lack. The prosperous think, if I sow, I'll multiply. The difference is not in the wallet, but in faith. Florence shared stories of people who were on the financial edge but, by giving wholeheartedly, opened unexpected doors. She would say that giving is an act of faith that challenges logic and calls the invisible into existence. Those who sow with joy reap abundance. Jesus himself reinforced this in John 12 verse 24. Unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it produces much fruit. The seed must leave the hand and die in the soil to be reborn multiplied. Kept, it will never bear fruit. In practice, this means that every act of generosity is like depositing into a heavenly bank. And unlike earthly banks, this one never fails, never collapses, never delays. Matthew 6 verse 20 reminds us, "Store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys." Giving is not a loss. It is an eternal investment. Now think with me. What has been your posture toward the little you have? Do you keep it in fear or plant it in faith? Perhaps your next harvest is just waiting for a seed. Write in the comments what your most meaningful experience with generosity has been. Folded hands. Who knows? Your testimony might inspire others to plant as well. If this message spoke to your heart, leave a like, thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share it so more people can discover the secret of the seed. Seedling. Chapter 7. Absolute Trust in God. Faith that multiplies resources. When Florence Scovel Shinn spoke about prosperity, she always emphasized that the foundation of everything was unwavering faith in God. Not partial faith, not a trust that falters in the face of circumstances, but total surrender. She said, "Fear is inverted faith. It is believing that evil can overcome good. But whoever trusts in God becomes unbeatable." The Bible reinforces this truth in Hebrews 11 verse 1. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. In other words, before money is in your hands, it must already be in your heart as certainty. The spiritual world responds to conviction, not to doubt. Many live like Peter, when he walked on water in Matthew 14 verses 29 to 30. As long as his eyes were fixed on Jesus, he walked on the impossible. But when he looked at the wind and the waves, he sank. The same happens with our finances. When we fully trust, we see miracles. When we look at scarcity, we are swallowed by fear. Florence explained that absolute trust is what unlocks the invisible vaults of provision. People who prayed but doubted in their hearts remained stuck. But those who declared with faith, even without seeing a way out, witnessed doors opening in unexplainable ways. That is because trust activates divine movement. Proverbs 3 verses 5 to 6 instructs us, Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight. Trusting with all your heart is exactly that. Not depending only on logic, but resting in the God who multiplies the little into abundance. A practical example is in John 6 verses 5 to 13, when Jesus fed 5,000 men with only 5 loaves and 2 fish. Humanly, it would be impossible. But by placing the little in Christ's hands, multiplication happened. The secret was not the initial amount, but the faith of the one who trusted God. And here is a powerful point. Those who trust do not despair when faced with little, but give thanks in advance for multiplication. Florence taught to use words of gratitude even before manifestation. She said, "Give thanks as if you had already received, and so it shall be." This is a heavenly code that few practice. Absolute trust also eliminates anxiety. Philippians 4 verses 6 to 7 exhorts us, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts." Anxiety blocks, but trust releases. In practice, this means waking up every day with a conviction that the God who cares for the birds of the air and the lilies of the field also cares for you. Matthew 6 verses 26 to 30. It doesn't matter if today the table is empty. Faith sees the abundance that is yet to come. This trust is what attracts resources. Now I ask you, have you been resting in God, or have you been living anxious because of lack? Comment below what challenges your faith the most today. Folded hands. Your comment may be the beginning of a transformation. If this message made sense to you, don't forget to leave your thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to learn to trust God without reservations. Chapter 8. Wealth as a Legacy. When the blessing transcends generations. One of the most powerful revelations about prosperity is that it was never meant just for you, but to bless those who come after you. Florence Scovel Shinn reminded us that true wealth is not merely about accumulating for the present, but about creating roots of abundance that will blossom beyond our lifetime. She said, "Everything we conquer spiritually becomes an inheritance for those who walk after us." The Bible confirms this vision in Proverbs 13 verse 22. "A good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children, but a sinner's wealth is stored up for the righteous." This shows us that prosperity is not a temporary whim, but a heavenly code that transcends time. Florence often taught that when you break patterns of scarcity in your mind, you do not break them only for yourself, but also for your descendants. How many households live under a silent repetition of poverty because no one dared to change their way of thinking? It is like an invisible chain holding families captive for generations. But when someone decides to align their words and faith with divine principles, the entire lineage is impacted. In the Old Testament, we see Abraham as an example. In Genesis 12 verse 2, God says to him, "I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing." The promise was not only for Abraham, but also for his descendants. The covenant of wealth and prosperity extended to Isaac, Jacob, and all of Israel. In other words, a life of faith generates a flow of blessings that cross generations. Florence explained that every word of faith is like a seed planted in spiritual soil. You may not see the result immediately, but your children and grandchildren will reap fruits of provision, open doors, and opportunities. The prayer of a mother, the faith of a father, the firmness of someone who decides to trust in God, all of this accumulates as invisible treasure in the spiritual world. However, she also warned, wealth without spirituality can be lost. How many families accumulated riches only to see the fortune vanish in a single generation for lack of wisdom? That is why Proverbs 10 verse 22 declares, "The blessing of the Lord brings wealth without painful toil for it." The true legacy is built on spiritual values, not merely on numbers in a bank account. Jesus reinforces this in Matthew 6 verses 19 to 20. "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. The teaching is not to deny material prosperity, but to remind us that it must be founded on eternal principles in order not to be lost. Here lies the secret. The greatest legacy is not just leaving material inheritance, but leaving spiritual codes. Teaching your children to declare the word, to trust in God, to use faith as the key that opens invisible vaults. This is the kind of wealth that cannot be stolen. Perhaps you come from a family marked by lack, but you must understand, in you, God can begin a new cycle. Your trust, your obedience, and your declarations can open paths that your ancestors never knew. You can be the Abraham of your lineage. And now I ask you, what legacy do you want to leave behind? Just possessions that can vanish, or principles that multiply abundance eternally? Share in the comments what you want your children and grandchildren to receive as inheritance. Folded hands. If this message touched your heart, like thumbs up, share it, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapters of this series on the heavenly codes of wealth. Chapter 9: Silence Against Doubt. Protecting the Revealed Code. Few people realize that one of the greatest enemies of prosperity is not the lack of money, but doubt. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that doubt works like a silent thief, stealing the seed of faith before it has time to germinate. That's why she advised, when the good is still in formation, keep silent. Do not expose your treasure to words of unbelief. The Bible confirms this wisdom. In Habakkuk 2 verse 3 we read, "For the vision is yet for an appointed time. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry." The problem is that, when we prematurely share our dreams and revelations, we often open the door to the disbelief of others. People may release words of fear, irony, or denial, and if we are not firm, those words enter the mind like poison. Jesus also warned us about this. In Matthew 7 verse 6 he said, "Do not give what is holy to the dogs, nor cast your pearls before swine." What he meant is that not everyone is prepared to understand or respect the spiritual treasures revealed to you. Sharing divine codes with people immersed in a mindset of scarcity can attract mockery and disbelief. Florence compared faith to a pregnancy. At the beginning, the baby is invisible, but already in formation. If someone casts doubt during this process, it can jeopardize the mother's confidence. In the same way, when we receive a heavenly code of prosperity, an inspiration, a promise, a biblical word that awakens us, we need to learn to protect it in silence until it manifests in the physical world. In the Old Testament, Joseph, son of Jacob, gives us a clear lesson. He received dreams of greatness from God, but by sharing them with his brothers, he was rejected and sold into slavery. Genesis 37 verses 5 to 28. The dream was true, but the time to reveal it had not yet come. How many of us make the same mistake? We speak too soon, and end up facing unnecessary resistance. Silence, therefore, is more than prudence. It is spiritual protection. Proverbs 21 verse 23 affirms, "Whoever guards his mouth and tongue keeps his soul from troubles." This does not mean living in absolute secrecy, but knowing how to discern the right moment to speak, and above all, to whom to speak. Florence said that words are creative forces. When you speak about your dream with faith, it gains energy. But when you speak in doubt, or in front of unbelieving people, that same dream can be stifled. It is like casting a seed on stony ground. It will not find room to grow. Protecting the revealed code also means protecting your mind from self-sabotage. Doubt does not only come from outside. It often arises within us. Thoughts like, "Will this really work?" Or "What if it doesn't?" corrode confidence in God. It is in these moments that inner silence becomes essential, silencing the voice of unbelief and replacing it with declarations of the word. Romans 4 verse 20 describes Abraham like this. He did not waver at the promise of God through unbelief, but was strengthened in faith, giving glory to God. The practice is clear. When you receive a promise, a dream, or a divine inspiration, speak of it to God in prayer, feed it with gratitude and faith, but do not be in a hurry to expose it to everyone. There are moments when the greatest proof of wisdom is simply to remain silent. And what about you? Have you ever shared a dream or project and faced negative words that almost undermined your confidence? Sparkles, share in the comments. Your experience may help others understand the importance of spiritual silence. If this message made sense to you, remember to like, thumbs up this video, subscribe, and activate the bell. That way you'll continue with us on this journey of discovering the heavenly codes of wealth. Chapter 10. Deciphering the Final Map. How to live in biblical prosperity. We have reached the culmination of this journey, deciphering the final map of prosperity. Florence Scovel Shinn affirmed that the universe operates by spiritual laws, as exact as mathematics. Likewise, the Bible presents a clear roadmap, though often ignored, for living in abundance. The problem is not a lack of instruction but a lack of practice. Jesus said in John 10 verse 10, "I came that they may have life and have it abundantly." This is not a vague metaphor. It is a declaration of God's plan for His children. Biblical prosperity is not empty luxury, nor selfish accumulation. It is fullness in every area: spiritual, emotional, physical, and material. It is living with sufficient resources to fulfill the divine purpose and still overflow into the lives of others. Florence emphasized that the Word is your staff. Everything begins at the spiritual level, passes through the mind, and materializes in the visible world. The Bible confirms, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit." Proverbs 18 verse 21. Whoever understands this code discovers that prosperity is not an accident, but a natural consequence of obedience to divine laws. The map of biblical prosperity can be divided into 4 pillars. Covenant with God. Recognize that He is the source, not money. But remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you power to get wealth. Deuteronomy 8 verse 18. Creative word. Use your mouth to release faith, not to sow doubt or scarcity. Practical obedience. Not just hearing but doing. James 1 verse 22 says, "Be doers of the word, and not hearers only." Active generosity. Prosperity multiplies when it flows. One person gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty. Proverbs 11 verse 24. This map, when applied, leads us to live what we call heaven on earth. Florence said prosperity was not just about accumulating, but living in harmony with the divine. Peace in the mind, health in the body, love in relationships, and material abundance sufficient to fulfill dreams. The silence that protects the code, the faith that remains firm, spiritual discipline, absolute trust. All the previous chapters are pieces of this map. Now, at the end, we understand that it is not about magic formulas, but about walking in partnership with God day after day. Look at the story of Joseph. Sold, wronged, forgotten. But at every stage, he remained faithful and obedient. In the right time, he was exalted as governor of Egypt. Genesis 41. This is the map in action: patience, obedience, faithfulness, and trust in God. Today this map is before you. It is not exclusive to pastors, leaders, or chosen people. It is for everyone who believes. Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you. Matthew 6 verse 33. This is the ending point and the starting point. And now I ask you, are you willing to decipher and live this map, not just as theory but as daily practice? Sparkles, if yes, write in the comments, "I live biblical prosperity." This will be your public declaration of faith. If this content spoke to your heart, leave a like, thumbs up, subscribe to the channel bell, and share it with someone who needs to discover that the codes of wealth are already revealed in God's Word. At the end of it all, the message is simple and powerful. Prosperity is not luck. It is obedience to spiritual laws. Florence Scovel Shinn revealed that the Word is the key, and the Bible confirms that faith, discipline, and generosity are the pillars of abundance. The codes to wealth are not hidden in human secrets, but are openly revealed in God's Word. True prosperity is the fruit of trust, silence against doubt, unwavering faith, and inspired action. Those who practice these codes inevitably reap abundance. And the moral of the story is clear. Wealth is not a privilege, it is the result of living in alliance with the Creator. See you in the next video.